Um, I am working on my children's book that I'm working on today, and I thought I'd come in and chat. But there's also been some really interesting news that is kind of all over TikTok and all over everywhere that I thought I would talk about a little bit as well. Hi, baby girl. And I thought I'd talk about that a little bit as well because I felt that it'd be fun. Uh, and because it's really fucking interesting news. There's a couple of really interesting things that I've come across over the last couple of days, actually, that are just fascinating to me. I had been under the impression that we didn't have any DNA from any other ancient hominins other than Neanderthal and Denisovian. But recently I found that we actually have a Heidelbergensis DNA, a 400,000-year-old Heidelbergensis DNA. What we thought was a Neanderthal, when we DNA tested it, we realized that it wasn't Neanderthal, it was actually Heidelbergensis. So we actually have, thank you, love. So we actually have Homo heidelbergensis DNA, which I thought was, I have a new phone stand thingy and it hangs. And so it kind of gets shaky sometimes. Which I thought was really freaking epic that we actually have like the species that we came from there, or the species that we believe we evolved from. We have their DNA now, which I mean, I love that ancient DNA is giving us so much of that information. But this find, the one that just came across about 3 million-year-old tool usage in a species that we didn't think was actually 300 million years or 3 million years old. Did I say 300 million-year-old tool usage? I might have. 3 million-year-old tool usage in a species that we didn't know was 3 million years old is really fucking fascinating. And so I thought we could talk about it a little bit today. And I mean, I don't know any more than the most, like I can't really find any more information than the most. I got to, dig into articles and stuff like that. And the, it's reporting what the articles are stating, but I've got to dig into like the scientific journals and see what the study of it is. But for any fine details, I mean, that you're not going to be able to find on your own. So I'm not really going to, be able to give you more information, right? Because it's such a new find. But I can help give some information. And I just, I thought it was a really cool thing, especially considering some of the stuff that we normally talk about. Again, I'm really working on the children's book that I'm doing. I've had a couple iterations of trying to get it done, and it hasn't worked. But I think I'm finally at a space where I'm going to have it the right way. I kind of have like, this is one of my last iterations. And so I kind of used it as a kind of rough draft to kind of bring more in. But I've decided to use watercolor pencils instead so that I can have that watercolor or use that watercolor pencil effect in the end to use that. We're absolutely in a classic. Use that to guide what I want it to do, because really what I'm trying to do is blend all of the senses into an image, right? And blend that thought process into an image. And so that in itself has a little bit of a hard thing, but in using the watercolors as the base, I'm hoping to kind of show the steps forward, and kind of give that ability for children who are learning art as well, like show mistakes, show different things along the way that can teach that it is okay to be able to make those mistakes in your creative journey, and to incorporate those mistakes into your creative journey, but also teach a connection within the creative journey. What are the 7 to 12 active species, John? What are the 7 to 12 active species? I want to know. That's an interesting thought process. I know of one other possible active species, but I do not know of 7 to 12. It's just going to create too much of a troll. Happy Black History Month. Absolutely. So, um, studying the phone. I'm trying to create it as a kind of story moves forward, and be able to make mistakes within that story and within that art and see it. And so, as I'm drawing it, it kind of helps sometimes to kind of just, think, uh, or not think, and to be able to kind of lose focus. And so I'm also having issues where, like, well, I'm uploading it, it takes a minute to upload it. And so I want to make sure that in doing that, I am creating a space where I have patience. And so this is why I'm kind of doing TikTok today as a live. Of course, I really did want to discuss and still want to discuss this new find, because I find this new find to be a really brilliant fucking thought process and a really brilliant understanding as we go forward, right? When we are moving forward within this, stole it from you, huh? Jesus Christ. It's important because of all of the things. So this is a species that we thought was not around at 3 million years ago. So this is our oldest find of this species. This is a species that we thought didn't eat meat. And this is that species butchering meat. And it is a species that we've only ever associated stone tool usage with Homo species, with the genus Homo. It's only ever been humans, right? So this is actually associating stone tool usage with the species before us, before Homo. Okay, so before Homo usage. Remember, we talked a little bit about ago about how there was some other tool usage alongside Homo habilis, but we weren't quite sure if it was because Homo habilis had moved back earlier or was an earlier species, on the timeline, or because there were other species around during the same timeline as Homo habilis. So what this does is takes the species that we thought was so. Our current understanding of Homo habilis and Homo or and Paranthropus boisei is that they're roughly 2.5 million years ago. So this pushes Paranthropus boisei back, um, literally like 500,000 years in its estimate. What it also does is, sorry, my YouTube did something weird and I want to make sure. I don't think there's anybody over there anyways. But what it did is push this back 500,000 years. The source is an article that came out. There's several different renditions of the article, but they're all based on there's several different public access renditions, because that's the important thing. The actual paper is going to be paywall protected. It's going to be a paper written in an academic journal that's going to require you to pay money to read the paper. So all of these articles are taken from that paper. It's, it came out like yesterday. I haven't gone and got the deeper research. The archaeologists that are talked about in here are all like archaeologists who are well known and accredited archaeologists, right? So there's no faulting with the sourcing at this point. These are actually like Smithsonian and like, now don't get me wrong, I'm really not into Western sources, right? And I really look at sources that are outside Western sources first. But we are talking, that said, we are talking about a space that is being led by people who, the archaeologists aren't just Western archaeologists, aren't just white archaeologists, right? There's a lot of incorporation, right? And we are talking about the sourcing on it being the field that is commonly accepted as sourcing on this, and the testing that is the scientific current testing being done on it all being accredited or peer reviewed or things that you can actually go and look at yourself, got to pay a little money to do it, right? Can I show? So I haven't uploaded it to my website really quick. Hold on, 5 minutes. Give me just a second, and I'll actually switch these articles over to the website on my thing. Um, just takes me about 2 seconds to get it up because I wasn't planning on really coming in and getting that in depth about this week. I was mainly looking at, there's a couple other sources on this site for something else, and I'm going to leave those sources up because they're for the site in Miami that actually is 7,000 years old, which predates Mesopotamia, and I would like to leave that tool up for a while. Oh shit. Okay, so it's going to be at the bottom of the page. There's one. Let me give you. I've got an ABC source currently, and then Smithsonian source currently. And again, I haven't been able to get into. I've been looking for articles I can access that are not behind paywalls because I don't do paywall accesses unless the current alumni status I have allows me access because I'm not paying for shit. I don't have the ability to as a very broke disabled veteran. Did it put it at the top? Let me look. Yes. So let me double check that it's up and working. Yes, on the nwiddaord.com on the bottom of the This Week tab. So the website is nwiddaord, same as my username. Well, all one year word, no periods. And on the This Week tab at the bottom is two sources, two articles on this. So you can get free access to some things, but not to all things. So like I don't, so my PSU access, like my alumni from PSU, gives me access to several archaeological journals and several archaeological sources. But I have to, or and scientific sources, because it's not just archaeological focus as university. But I have to, like Eldevise is a very popular one that's so much stuff, and JC something or another, but it's not the good JC. Are really like packed full of a lot of the articles, and my PSU login won't work on those. With the library access through PSU, I can get to some things, but I can't get to like full journal articles on a lot of things. But you can get access to some things using our library cards, absolutely. Yes, that's true. If I would go down to PSU, I could probably find a way to get access to them. But I will tell you that when I was actually in school, there were still articles I could not get access to. Like, even then, I had professors that would try to get access and could not get access to, just because some things you have to pay for. So I would have professors that would go and pay for articles so that you could access them. Because Western thought turns everything into capitalistic gain, right? And so, unless you can get them off of, some people don't allow access for free, even to other people's, right? Even to people studying that, they won't allow access to free, unless you are willing to come on board or be a part of a specific study. Oh, who's Aaron? Yeah, yeah, and it should be. It absolutely should be. It always should have been. Um, Okay, so with this one though, really all it does is push back. Well, not all it does. What it really does is it pushes this thought process that we are the only tool users, the only people to understand the idea of some form of a complex tool usage. And it also changes our understanding of Boisei. And it also changes our understanding of all the tools that we have seen along the way now, right? Because if we have only associated these tools with Homo species up until now, because we have only found them in association with Homo species, or we have found them outside of association with Homo species, but we weren't sure, we hadn't seen that direct connect evidence before, which we have a problem. Well, not a problem, but we do need to see that direct connect evidence for a lot of different things. Like there is that and it can be problematic if you say that you must have that, even though you have several other sources of indirect connect evidence, right? Like, so you have 10 people calling a duck, you don't need the DNA to get it as duck, right? Like, it's called a duck. That's what it's called now, right? Like, um, so you you have to kind of go both ways. Like, you have to understand that you should have not only that both weights are equal, that having multiple facets of information that prove the same thing equals the same as having a singular definitive absolute source. Like these things should count as weight. So with this, really it's saying that we're moving back everything later. And everything we've looked at over the last 5, 10 years really has given us this understanding that we don't know shit, that we are not unique as we want ourselves to be, that really we are just another part of the biome that exists. And if we can, instead of, if we can understand ourselves as created, as important to this biome, as a nurturing part of this biome, then we can understand how all of these things fit in complexly, and how much further back they go, and how that knowledge, granted a knowledge that they didn't need to be an eternal being, they didn't need to leave indelible marks, um, and it is that thought process of needing those indelible marks that changes the way we view ourselves fundamentally, that can also fundamentally be reversed, but gives us this detachment. Yeah, and I love the fact that it gives us definitive proof. Like, I absolutely, and I'm not faulting this at all. All I'm stating is that we should have definitive proof of something unless we have a heavily weighted evidence of multiple knowledges of something. So if I have lots of oral traditions that state something, and then I have evidence of something, but I don't have like DNA, right? Like scientific hardline testable, right? This stuff together should count as much as having this, right? Because this stuff combined has weight. This is what I was trying to say. But I really love this because it does. It gives us this final definitive proof, finite definitive proof, not finite, testable, reviewable, and heavy definitive proof that there is another species out there utilizing things that we think are ours alone. And this species is a cousin of us. This is a species that we our ancestors would have lived alongside, and this is a species that is a part of our family tree, our family lineage, right? So it is not the same genus, but it is in the same Oh, I don't remember if it's tribe is the next one up or not. I believe it's in the same tribe. Which, when we talk about words like tribe and band, and remember that tribe is a group that bases it off family connections and family lines, whereas band is a group that bases off of several different groups of family groups together in one, right? So, hello, hello, hello. And I'm not here to, I mean, I'm discussing and I find it frigging fantastic and I'm really interested. And I had a couple people who were saying that they wanted to know what I thought. I really only saw it like I think last night. But I'm mainly wanting to get some artwork done today, and try and get my focus back on. It's not that my focus, I've tried it like 3 or 4 different times and revamped how I'm doing it like 3 or 4 different times to get the children's book finished this, you know, shortly. I don't want to put a timeline on it because, um, and really, I wanted to do watercolor pencils after I had tried it a couple different ways and had not made it through in a couple of different ways. And so thought the watercolor pencils would work great. But I did not have watercolor paper. So I had to go back and get watercolor paper. And then the watercolor paper I had didn't fit on the printer, or not the printer, the scanner. So, just different steps through. And then, of course, the other day when I was in here, when like everything, after going through several different pages and putting several different things up, um, everything crashed out and I lost all the work. Though I'm kind of glad on some levels because I realized that I want to put the words in after because it's going to take less post edit to put the words in than it would be to put the than it would be to edit where the words had not putting the words in had not matched up with the coloring scheme or the artwork. So I think that it's going to be better in this way anyways. But and it's all a learning process as it's supposed to be. It's all a movement forward. It's a first, so everything from them forward becomes a, weighted off of it. John, I would like to see articles on that because as far as I know, that's not true. The genetic the alleles for pale skin go back 900,000 years to Homo erectus, and we both get them from Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and sapiens. And it is how Neanderthal gets it from Homo erectus or Homo heidelbergensis, another just subfamily of Homo erectus. So they found meat and vegetables. Well, and we knew with Boisei, we call Boisei the nutcracker. Your sibling. We call Boisei the nutcracker because Boisei has extremely strong jaws. And if you look at the teeth in the article, you can see how worn down they are. Um, and it's because we believed that they ate like vegetation mainly, that they were more of a herbivore than anything else. They might, I think we thought that they might have ate small protein like bugs and stuff like that, but not like meat. We thought that we call them the nutcracker because we thought they ate a lot of nuts, right? And a lot of like bark and stuff like that. Yes, we are. Yes. And so this absolutely confirms it as having so we actually think before this we actually kind of believe that humans are the first of the primates to eat meat primarily, or not primarily but as a regular thing. Like, so other primates will get small sources of protein, like you'll see like bugs, and I believe you can see small animals or things like that. Maybe, but I can't remember for certain. I'm not a primatologist. Um, but we don't really believe that prior species are omnivoric. We believe they're more herbivoric. And we're seeing with this means that Boisei is omnivoric. at least in some, in some ways. They might still be something that eats more herbivore diet, and it's slight omnivoric, but you can also get that grinding down from, like, maybe they were cracking open bone too, right? If they're using hammerstones and cobblestones, because that's part of what's in this find. Remember when we talked about here in Turtle Island in this Rudy Mastodon find, right? The hammerstones and cobblestones. This is the same tool usage. They also have a core within this. A core is so a core is how you make flakes, how you make blades, how you make pretty much any other tool afterwards, right? So I did see, let me go into, let's see how much of my book we get done. I want to go into the specifics of the stone tools that I have so far. And again, this is analysis of wear pattern on the stone tools and the animal bones, just like here in this Rudy Mastodon find. And we're looking at, they believe them to be Oldowan stone tools. Trying to find the specific paragraph that goes into it, because I saw a specific paragraph that goes into. So they're all Oldowan tools. So they're stating in this article that they've got, let me look at this. I went through it a bit, but I didn't go through it too much in depth, just because I was doing some other stuff. And I went through to find a good article that I could actually look at, but didn't go too much. Yes, okay. Hammerstones, cores, and flakes. The hammerstones are used for hitting other tools to create tools or for pounding other materials. Cores typically have an angular or oval shape, and when struck at an angle with a hammer stone, the core splits off a piece or flake that can be used as a cutting or scraping edge or further refined using a hammerstone. So cores are something that we see all the way up through any culture using stone tools until the end of the usage of stone tools. Cores, so I think that we call this backwards. The professor that taught this was the professor that wouldn't fucking listen to Indigenous voices, and so I really had a problem with him. But and so some of the things that he taught just were, the way they stuck were different, anyways. But and not my Indigenous voice. I'm at other Indigenous voices. My Indigenous voice is not an Indigenous voice. I'm like, oh, I'm Indigenous, listen to me. I'm talking about other Indigenous people he wasn't listening to. So, anyways, we call it the expedient tool, I believe, though sometimes I think that it's been backwards and it's in the non-expedient. And what it is I believe we call it expedient because we're carrying it around with us, because you basically just hit a flake off of it as you're migrating, as you're traveling through your yearly cycle. And this is that hunter gatherer versus collector. And one of those ways that we can tell whether groups are hunter gatherer versus collector. Um, and again, because the teaching in my head was so weird, sometimes it's hard for me to go with. So, what I'm going to go with is my prior knowledge, um, and understanding. And if I am incorrect in this, I apologize. And if you point it out, I will totally take accountability. But My understanding is that in collector groups versus hunter-gatherer groups, collector groups being a group that builds a space that they stay in, and then they go out during different seasons and collect in other areas. They might stay in that area for a handful of weeks, a month or so, and then they bring it back. Like these are people who will go to the coast for a salmon run, or people who will go north during the reindeer rainbow reindeer migration, right? So like different groups of people that will go out for a couple of months, but their home space is in a singular space. And then you have a group of people, and this is hunter gatherer groups that are, and this is why they define them hunter gatherer groups. And I don't know why, because the others still hunt and gather. But that are actually have a circular or and it's almost always circular in some way. It always returns. Okay, so you follow a migration pattern of seasonal patterns. You summer here and you winter here and you spring here and you fall here, and you follow this circular, or I mean, every time I've heard of it, it's circular. The circular pattern of following the cycles of the seasons to find the best needs, the best nutrients to fit your needs, right? Um, with the groups that are constantly moving, having a core, you might have a core that you got from up here, and then you take it with you, and you're going to flake pieces off as you're going around. Um, though I believe it's often thought that expedient is more associated with collectors because collector cultures will take cores with them when they're going out to collect, because again, it's that expedient. If something is, and they associate it with that because of the fact that they figure that they're going to discard that flake. In my understanding, you discard what's broken, but you don't necessarily discard something that isn't broken, right? Unless you lose it. So I would disagree with that myself. But the core itself indicates that advanced thought process of taking off a blade for cutting. Um, to my knowledge, all of these flakes with Oldowan tools are not too finely refined afterwards. We don't really see fine refinement afterwards until later on, because you don't see things like points in these early groups. You don't see things like arrow points or spear points. What you see is often flakes with a flat side to them so that you can scrape or cut with that flake. But there's not a deeper modification of it. You might fine tune on edge. Like, okay, so if I flaked off a piece, and I usually when you flake off, you have a hilt almost on it, like this bump part at the back end from where you flaked it off. Okay. And so when you have that piece, you can hold that piece here. Now I'm going to use that to cut. I'm going to use that to scrape a hide. I'm going to, though currently our evidence of clothing usage doesn't go back this far, there might be other hide usages, I would think. Um, I don't know though. Like we're not sure where that crossover of utilizing all of it is coming into, right? Um, where that crossover of needing to wear clothing is coming in, right? Again, when we're looking at it's really low now, so that I can actually like maybe put this up and not um, be troll heavy. Again, we're looking at a group that we have long identified as being this in feature. Um, they're known for having extremely strong jaws and muscular attachments that go up to the crest of their skull. They're known for having, again, the nutcracker teeth. Okay, they are Oldowan tools. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting the right sites on this. Like, so they're stating in this that they're the oldest, but at the same time, halfway down through the article, they are talking about another set of Oldowan tools at 3.3 million years old. So I'm taking a look to get that back. It's backwards again, isn't it? Damn spell check. Did I spell something wrong? I might have. I thought I copied it down, but I might have. I'm horrible at Latin spellings. They suck ass. Okay, it is. So, again, we're talking about something that, you'll see where they'll go back and forth about what they think the information means, right? One will state that this is the oldest, and one will state that there is an older. You kind of have to look between them. What I'm going to do with that is go and take a look and see if I can see the other site that they're talking about here, because this site, Nyanga, uh, in Kenya, they're dating at 2.6 to 3 million years old, with these artifacts being 2.9 million years old. These are conservative datings, so they might be actually dating them as older. As you go through this article, you're going to notice that it states halfway down somewhere. First, it gives you a date. They started this in 2015, but it starts to talk about Lomeki 3, which I know of in Turkana. This is the Turkana Boisei, to my knowledge. And I want to take a look and see exactly what it's talking about with that. Because again, you see we're in the same article, it's giving you two very different thought processes, right? At one point, it's like this is the oldest, and this is not hominin. This is no, it is hominin. It is hominin. It is not our. So it's in the same. I got to pull up a taxonomy. I never can remember what how the taxonomy places them. Or places the next level up, what name it gives the next level up. Boisei was one of my favorites prior to hominin or homo, but it's because it's one that we actually have a lot more information on than some of the others. We have so few pieces of information on most of these different groups of early human that the pieces of information that we have are so fine-tuned studied to a certain extent. I'm trying to see if I can find my taxonomy in a book instead of looking it up online, but I might have to look it up online. So the Turkana site is absolutely, and as far as I've known, it's always been Homo erectus. And what I'm seeing on it, they have older ones, so that would be the oldest. So this is not going to be our oldest tool usage. It is just evidence of this species using at the same point of time. So, and the hominins with Lomecli 3 are Homo erectus. They can't be Homo erectus. They have to be habilis, or at least the ones associated. So we know that, like, you'll see different strata holds different groups of hominins coming down. So Lomekwi is they don't have a hominin associated with it. Lomekwi is just in situ tools. They're just Oldowan tools. So this is probably another one of those. Remember when we were talking about they have tools that predate Homo habilis that they haven't understood who to associate them with. So again, we didn't think that Boisei went back as far as now we see that they do as well. So Lamechwi is probably actually Boisei then. Me, I'm not on either of them really. I've been doing other stuff. Like I set a once a week scheduled. Like I was here Wednesday at 11 because I ended up having an appointment Wednesday afternoon I didn't know about. Um, I had to get my iron infusion done, and they set it up really weird at different times, and so I have to go when they want me to go. But I had Wednesday at noon this week, and I'll do next Wednesday at noon. But like I said, I was when I was said that I was just going to schedule just one weekly. It's so that I can come in here and do other things. I was actually writing today, but this distraction, or not writing, but drawing today for the children's book. But this article is a distraction for me as well. So I have mods in here, right? Is somebody being an ass? Are they? Raymond, honey, so I'm going to tell it to you like this. The idea that we're different races was developed by Europeans to perpetuate racism, to justify their atrocity after having committed genocide against Turtle Island Indigenous people and having stolen people from Africa and other spaces and brought them to Turtle Island to commit genocide against them as well, right? Um, and so to justify this when they can no longer justify this biblically by the doctrine of discovery in their church and manifest destiny, when they can no longer justify it that way and science comes into being and they realize that evolution is there, they create the theory of race. And they create that theory to justify the atrocity that they have been committing for the last couple of hundred years because they can't face accountability for the atrocity that they've been committing for the last couple hundred years. Besides the fact power is something people want to maintain when they have it. And so in the creation of the theory of race, they use pseudoscience. They use things like phrenology, which is the study of the skull. And they use things like watercolors on papers to describe the shade of skin and glass eyes to describe shade. All of these different shapes and things like that to try and state that the external actually is everything somebody is internally as well. And that depending on what you look like externally depends on whether or not you feel pain or whether or not you're intelligent or whether or not your primary purpose on this planet is to serve others or to be an upper crust, right? And in the use of all of these things, they don't just use it against Black people, and they don't just use it against Turtle Island Indigenous people, and they don't just use it against these other different groups of people. The Swedish people the Swedish people actually have residential schools and use it against the Sami, who are light of skin and have light hair and are Northern European and have been for 7,000 years. And it's used in pretty much everywhere. It's also used against other white people in their area, like famously Carrie Bell, who was a force sterilized because her mother had been a drunk and a single woman who had children, and therefore that was considered criminally insane at the time because she had been left with a child, and that's criminally insane. How dare you fail that? And so her mother was forced sterilized, and Carrie was forced sterilized. This is a very famous case. Eugenics works really well when it's developed alongside the theory of evolution and it's stated to be science, right? This is also why we have things like the earliest gynecologist, the father of gynecology, performing hysterectomies on Black women without painkillers because they couldn't feel pain because race states that Black people don't feel pain. And this is why we have the highest maternal mortality rate in the industrialized world. And it's primarily in Black and Indigenous women, right? Because of the fact that race states that they don't feel pain, the theory of race, right? The theory of race has been debunked. It doesn't exist. It's pseudoscience. Racism is still here. Ethnicity matters. But the theory of race, it's been debunked, right? Uh, so, with the theory of race being debunked, we have to understand that if we start to create other ideas of separatism from each other and take it even further, as into like we're different species, which has no scientific fact, and I can go over that science and will next. If we take it into there, we give people another reason to other and kill people based on this idea that specific groups are supreme to other specific groups. Even if it goes the other way, best case scenario, let's say it goes the other way, right? Even if it goes the other way, and now the people on top are the people that have been marginalized for the last 2 to 300 years, it's not fucking right. Othering isn't right. And othering is just a tool that those in power use to keep you in fucking checked instead of checking their shit because of the fact that they're hoarding, they're destroying you, and they would rather that you are against the person that comes into our country, or the person who's houseless, or against the person down the street who looks differently than you, or against the person who speaks a different language. Then you opened your fucking eyes and realize they're trying to fucking kill you and they don't care. All they care about is how much they can exploit out of you. So, taking us into separate species, as we debunk the theory of race and show that there's really only one human race, right? As we move into that, if you go into different species, all you're doing is doubling down on that white supremacist theory thought process, that one thought process has to be supreme over others to create diversion, to maintain somebody in power. I don't care what the skin color of the person in fucking power is. I'm tired of being exploited. I'm tired of being attacked. I'm tired of not feeling safe leaving my house. And I believe that I'm not the only one, right? So please don't take us into different species. It's pseudoscience. Beyond that, why I know it's pseudoscience. We have children together too easily to be separate species. To be a separate species, you if you are two separate species, when you have sex and that creates a child, if it creates a child, because it only rarely creates a child, the child of those two species, when they meet and they create a child, is very often not viable enough to make it to birth. And when it is viable enough to make it to birth, it very often doesn't make it past infancy, toddlerhood. If it makes it to adulthood, which is a rarity, the child that makes it to adulthood is very frequently infertile and unable to produce offspring. So, we can't be two separate species. We make babies together way too fucking easily to be two separate species, and we like to too much. And I mean, that doesn't stop us from other species, because Neanderthals were other species, Denisovian was other species, and that's why we have so little Neanderthal and Denisovian DNA with us, with the amount of fucking we did with them, and all of those other species that we have out there, right? That we see fingerprints of in our DNA, right? Which are different things. We all have admixture from different groups. We all have different admixture, right? Right. So if different colored skin makes you a different species, you would not see mixed children. Fact. If where you come from on this planet made you different species, you would not see mixed children, or rather, mixed children would be an extreme rarity and they would not be able to procreate. If we are different species, mixed children would be an extreme rarity and we would not be able to procreate. They would not be able to procreate. We, me, very mixed as they get, right? No, what it means is that tigers and lions are both cats, right? They both come from, they have what's called a last common ancestor. When you have a last common ancestor, this is why we were able to breed with Neanderthals and Denisovians. But again, all of those things hold true with tigers and lions. When you breed a tiger and a lion together and get a on or a liger, um, one of those is more capable than the other because of the fact that one species female is more capable of carrying those children to full term. Okay. And with ligers and tions are extremely rare because, and I think that they do it as the mother is the first. So tigers are unable to carry lion children or half lion children as easily as lions are able to carry half tiger children. I might have that backwards depending on how they set that naming structure up. But of the children being born, you see that they're almost always infertile and that many of them don't make it to adulthood. They have deficiencies, they have different, neurological problems or lung problems or heart problems or different things like that, that they're not completely viable going forward, right? Um, yeah, Tigons, I think, is the one is more rare, more hard to get. And so that's why we know that we're not two different species because we know that tigers and lions are two different species, and this is what happens when tigers and lions breed. Same thing with mules. Donkeys and horses are both two different species of the equine genus, right? They're both, equine species or genus, but the species is a different species, right? Like Homo sapien and Homo neanderthalis, right? So they're both of the equine genus. They both have a last common ancestor that's really close. They can breed, but um, and actually they tend to actually breed decently. Like you can get mules relatively decently, I think, but with the breedings, it's very, very rare for them to be fertile. Very rare. Like I think one in like a 500 or 1,000 is fertile. Tigons, hybrids, and bears. Oh my, screenshot that bitch. um, but that is why we know that I think he was talking about the hybrid animals. That is why we know that we're not different species. And I would challenge you not to go down that line of thought anyways, because the science shows nothing of it and all it will do is give more reason for othering if you're encouraging that line of thought. All it will do is give more reason for division and hate in a group that division and hate is never going to benefit you. It's just never going to benefit you. It harms it does more harm to you than it does good. For me to, and this is not me, for me to sit in my nice home that I have, I mean, it's an apartment, it's not that great, but to sit in my four walls and my stability that I have sometimes and talk or be negative about people who are houseless around me who are just trying to exist, right? Find a safe space to sleep tonight, maybe get clean, maybe function, right? For me to sit in my space and speak ill of them, it does no benefit to me, right? And it does no benefit to them. To put up spikes does no benefit to the community, does no benefit to them. To divide the benches so nobody can lay down, fuck, it does no benefit to my disabled ass that sometimes needs to lay down, even though I'm not houseless, right? And it certainly does no benefit to disabled people or to houseless people who need to be able to lay down, right? All of these things, not only do they do no benefit for either, but living in a society that puts funding wars above funding each other and caring for each other is negatively impactful to me in my house as property prices raise, as taxes raise, as the cost of food raises, as minimum wage stays the same. As nothing is put in to benefit the entire community is affected, not just the members of the community who we visualize as not succeeding in the same way as other members of the community. Personally, the only reason I don't live in a tent on the side of a mountain right now, here in Portland, because there are plenty of mountains. Oh, fuck. Sorry. Hate doxing myself. Here in the Pacific Northwest, there's plenty of spaces that I could just live in a tent on the side of a mountain. And the only reason I don't is because of the paperwork I have for custody that states that I have to provide a bedroom for my children if I want to be able to see my children. And I like my children, right? So, um, there are lots of reasons I would much rather live that than this because this is pretty, oh, God. Being in the center of all the people who are screaming at each other, even when it's not directed at me, and not being able to hear the birds. There's frogs in our pool every is like this time of year, and I'll tell you, I get nostalgic and feel like I'll lay in my bed in the morning and just listen to the frogs just to feel some semblance of mornings waking up when I was younger, mornings waking up outside of a city, right? Just to feel some semblance. This is so exhausting. It's so exhausting. Everything about it is exhausting. Okay, so Colleen, I have lived in a tent for years at a time. So when I state this, I do not I'm not thinking of it as I could do that. Um, I agree that people do not understand how hard living off the land is unless they have done so. Absolutely 100%. Just like I believe 100% that people who give up their millions that have always had millions so that they can go and be poor, or give up their secure lives so that they can go and be poor on some form of crusade, don't know what they're getting into, right? You don't know what poor is until you've been there. And that's why I also feel that people who start out poor and get to a place of some form of security and money understand what they're losing more, right? But, uh, or not, but I'm trying to avoid that word anyways. Sorry, that's such a common usage word. I believe all that stuff. And I think with all of that stuff, that it's very, very important for us to understand that uh, living off the land can be extremely difficult. And not only can living off the land be extremely difficult, but living off the land is doable, right? Hold on a second. Something came through and I need to pause this for a second.
Hey babe, can I have some headache medicine? I have a migraine.
I'll be right back, everybody. Sorry, family. He did. Sorry about that. I'm reading back through. So everybody on the planet has Neanderthal DNA except for two populations within Africa. The two populations within Africa are the Oyo population of West Africa and the Khoi population of South Africa. Those are the only two populations that do not have Neanderthal DNA. And they have three ghost species. Ghost species are species that we see a fingerprint in the DNA, but we don't actually see species in the fossil record of them. So we don't have a full genome from them. We might see the species, we just don't have the DNA from the species. So the Khoi people, I might be pronouncing it, I might have gotten it off again. Khoi people of South Africa and the Oyo people of West Africa are the only two populations that don't have Neanderthal DNA on the planet. But those two populations do have three ghost species. Turtle Island Indigenous people also have a ghost species. Australian Indigenous people also have a ghost species. Denisovians and Neanderthals have a ghost species. And I did see something that came across recently, though I haven't seen more in depth on it, on AI identifying a ghost species in Europe. But I'm not sure how they relate that ghost species. Like if it's the ghost species that they're talking about with the Neanderthal and Denisovian DNA or something else. Um, but yeah, homelessness is not a crime, absolutely. And I'd much rather sometimes just because it's so very much. With all of that, though, I think that it's important to recognize that when we are othering others, when we create othering, when we perpetuate othering, when we look for new ways to other, when we try to divide, and again, this does not mean that we shouldn't have distinct ethnicities and distinct cultures, right? I'm not stating that we're supposed to be homogenous. I'm not stating that we're supposed to be monolithic. What I am stating is that I can look at another culture and appreciate that other culture and value that other culture without othering that other culture, without thinking that that other culture is in some way valuable or even better than my culture. Like sometimes we do that. Like othering is the latest term that we use, but it starts as Orientalism versus Occidentalism. Oriental is a slur, so we don't use that term anymore. We use othering as a term now, but it starts with that because of the idea that specific areas were more advanced and specific areas were therefore more exotic, right? Um, anything that creates so othering can also be a I see you as better than me, right? So anything that creates that divide, though, that not distinction, right? Distinction is beautiful, but division, hate, malcontent, that is what we need to avoid. That is something, excuse me, that um, that is what kills. Frankly, that is what kills in the basis of terms. That is what kills and what is being used to kill you and me and everybody else uh, when we stop being exploitable or useful for at least documented the last 10,000 years, right? That is what has been used. And it doesn't start with racism. It starts with the barbarians in the hills. It starts with, you know, God kings wanting to protect you. But it starts with the need to maintain control. So don't find another way to do it. Well, there are laws on the books that state that you can't feed people, that if you give people food, you are breaking the law. If I go into McDonald's and buy a hamburger and hand it to somebody, I'm breaking the law. If I cook a meal in my home and hand it out, I'm breaking the law in some communities. Who created the internet, the web, John? You want me to talk about who created something within the last 20, 30, see, 80s probably is the start of cell phone technology. So what is that, 40 years? Who fucking cares? Who created the internet? Who created peanut butter? Who created the bow and the arrow? Who created fire usage? Who created art? Uh, who created who had sanitized cities in the 1400s? Who had sanitation? Who created ecology? Right? Um, who creates the internet? That's a really good one. Who is the first people to create a computer? Who sent the Apollo missions to fucking the moon? Black women sent the Apollo missions to the moon, if you did not know. Black women. And a woman created the internet. And a black, oh fuck, I think it was a black woman created the computers as well, like the software, like the mathematical software for computers. So, you know, who created what, boo? You didn't create shit. What did you create? What have you created? Just because one white guy somewhere creates something doesn't mean you created jack shit. And it certainly doesn't mean all white people created jack shit. We are all creators, or we all have the capacity to be. But I would venture that a lot of people currently don't create. And that's part of the function disconnect that they have, is that they're not creating. I'm creating today myself. Well, and this is creating, though. That was not the creation today I was working on, right? And I've gotten sidetracked. But absolutely, like, we are all creators. We all have the capacity to create. That's one of the I personally believe and personally find to be the fundamental things that is fundamentally human. Based, not fundamentally, innately human, innate to us. Nurturing community and creativity, that spark, curiosity. Why? But um yeah, I think that this absolutely is amazing that we're seeing the fact that it is other human or other species out there that weren't human species. There are other species out there that weren't human species that are absolutely creating tools. um oh, the Lamechian tools aren't Oldowan tools. That's the difference on this. So these are the oldest Oldowan tools. Oh my god. But All of those things predate habilis. So all of these things are those tools that we've been talking about before that were like they've got tools that predate habilis and we're not sure where they're coming from. That would be the Lomeckian tools, is the tools that are predating habilis that they're not sure where they're coming from. And it's roughly the same timeline, 300,000 years. I mean, it 300,000 years is our entirety of an existence as a species, absolutely, but it is also, can be a very uh short blip in the cycle of evolution of time, right? The cycle of life. And so uh, these are probably absolutely well. So Paranthropus is a whole genus, like Homo is a whole genus, right? Boisei is not the only Paranthropus. Lomecwi doesn't have a tool or doesn't have a hominin associated with it. Um, but this is absolutely our earliest evidence of an Oldowan toolkit and the earliest evidence of them associated with any being because the Lomecwi doesn't have it a being associated with it. Um, trying to make sure I've got exactly which tools because my okay. So Uh, they found three individual hippos. Two of these incomplete skeletons included bones that showed signs of butchery. The team found a deep cut mark on one hippo's rib fragment and a series of four short parallel cuts on the shin bone of another. That's interesting. There's not a lot of reason to uh, I don't know what kind of cuts you're trying to take away for short parallel cuts. Anyways, Plummer also said, we've associated that on other things as a count too, right? We've seen that where like there's that deliberate, I'd have to take a look at the bones. Plummer said they also found antelope bones that showed evidence of hominin slicing away flesh with stone flakes or of having been crushed by hammer stones to extract marrow. And again, when we look at bones, we can see that a fresh crack cracks differently than a long like so again I've used toast before. If you take a piece of toast and you butter it so it's all moist like bones inside a body are and you try and break it, it kind of tears, it doesn't like really break. But if you leave it to sit for 24, 48 hours on your table and it dries out and you break it, it's going to break, right? You don't have to tear it. So the same is true when we look at bones. When we're looking at bones, if a crack in the bone is a spiral fracture, which indicates twisting, or cracked in a specific way that I okay, so I'm not exactly sure what the fundamentals of the cracks are because I haven't participated in studies that have looked at the fundamentals. In my forensic class, didn't really look at the fundamentals of the way bones cracked. We looked at healing and ossification as much or much more to see timeline. But in the way that they crack, which I would assume because it is a wet bone, that the cracking would have be porous, right? Be more of a because you can break it, but you're going to get more of a splintery, porous thing than a sharp break with a fresh or a dry, like over time, million-year old sharp break bone, right? You and not splintery as in splinters of bones, but like if you break a chicken bone when it's fresh, right? When it's hot, right? If you're breaking a chicken bone, or if you take like a chicken bone that's still like within the flesh itself and you've just pulled it out of the fridge, right? That's pretty much in a close approximation. Obviously, it's been dead probably for a week at this point, but it's still pretty much in a close approximation. You take it and you break it. What you're getting is a breakage that kind of has splinteries at the end, but there's like that porous bone in between that kind of fragments with the splinters. You're not going to have that porous bone so much in a long term 3 million-year-old bone, right? Like when we were looking at this 3D mastodon find, that was really significant because we were talking about the fact that they wanted to state this happened during the excavation, but if it had happened during the if it had happened during the excavation, it would have happened in a different wear pattern. The breakage would have broken differently. So this is the same thing. They're seeing that state of breakage that you're finding in wet bone, fresh kill bone, right? So when you're looking through this, it really kind of details out how we're definitely seeing. Because fire would not be harnessed by hominins for another 2 million years or so. I think we have evidence of fire that goes back further than that. Like, I think we have evidence of fire within Erectus, like at 1.5 million years ago. So maybe not quite that long. But these stone tool makers would have eaten everything raw, perhaps pounding the meat into something like a hippo tartare to make it easier to chew. So this is a new find. They have the teeth with it. We've talked before about how they can take the tartar from teeth and analyze the tartar from teeth and see what it is that's eaten. So it might be something that, as again, this is a new to find. This is 2015. Um, so or when they found it is 2015. The publishing is just now. But with that, what we might see is that as they're looking at the teeth, the plaque in the teeth, they might find more evidence of what else they were eating, like if there was other things alongside the hippo or things like that, right? Um, but yeah, I think it's really cool. I really love things like this that show us that we are really seeing and understanding and having knowledge not only in us, but like this isn't an entirely different species. This is science, an entirely different species, right? Because again, tool usage is science. That's technology. Tool usage is technology. So this is technology in another species. And we see technology in other species today. We see it in corvids, we see it in other primates, we see it in a couple of other different species that I can't think of off the top of my head. But in the tool usage that we see, corvids can assemble tools. Corvids can take a series of straws and assemble them together to use a straw. There's like a video I'll see if I can find, right? But they're really the only species that I know of that has the capability of going further than just using what's available, right? Like you will see that other primates will use sticks almost as spears or pokers, and you will see the other primates will use stones, hammer stones, and cobblestones, where they will crack apart nuts often, or shells often. But you don't see like flakes, right? You don't see the deliberate crafting of a tool. The deliberate crafting of a tool is that first step to having a phone. That's that foundation of having a phone. That's that understanding of having a phone, right? And it could be argued that, well, you can see a crow do corvids do straws into tools today and, create tools out of different levels of straws today. You probably couldn't 3 million years ago, right? Not even sure if we had corvids 3 million years ago or what the ancestor of corvid was doing 3 million years ago. I know we have raptors with Neanderthals, um, and corvids with Neanderthals, but that's again like 600,000 years ago, right? So really this becomes the start of the Oldowan tool complex then. And really what it shows is that the start of the Oldowan tool complex does not start with habilis like we thought it did. And that Homo habilis is not the first use of tools. that Boisei is absolutely, to our knowledge now, the first use of tools. Though again, the Lomekwi site, um, if we can find an associated being, it might change that, right? Um, I really like the fact that they're talking about in here, with these tools, you can crush better than an elephant's molar can and cut better than a lion's canine can. Oldowan technology was like subtly evolving a brand new set of teeth outside your body, and it opened up a new variety of tools on the African savanna to our ancestors. Well, this is interesting. They were first drawn to the Hama Peninsula in Kenya by reports of large numbers of fossilized bamboo-like monkeys called Therapithecus oswildi, which are often found alongside evidence of human ancestors. That's interesting to me. It makes me wonder why we're seeing this other primate alongside us at this time. Like, uh, it's a monkey, so it's not within our same line, right? It's not a great ape. Is this maybe something that is this something that we well, okay, so if we don't feel like we were eating meat at the time, it's probably not something that we were killing. Is it something that we were hanging out with, right? Like, is it something that was an early domesticated comfort, right? Boise is so there. Oh gosh, I'm not sure how many different. Let me pull up a taxion thing. No, that one doesn't give me the in depth that I want. So there are different. We call them different classifications of all of the entire planet of all species, even like trees, fish, things like that. So our kingdom as Homo sapiens is Amelia, animal, and Amelia. Um, and the kingdom of all animals, right? So that would include anything that we consider an animal, including like bugs and stuff like that. That's an animal, right? Uh, you go down, the phylum is Chordata. I'm not sure what that means. The class is Mammalia. So all mammals are under this class. Then you get into the order for us, which is primates, and the order for Boisei would have been primates as well. The suborder for us is Haplorhini, and then the infraorder Simiformes. The family Homininidae, day, day, day. Hominidi, yeah. Anyways, it's got the DEA at the end of it. And then the subfamily. So Paranthropus is of the subfamily that we're of. The subfamily, and I think actually they're the same tribe. So they're the same subfamily, which is Homininae, ending with A-E. And then the tribe, which is homininae. Never can pronounce these things right. Latin and me don't get along. And then the genus for us is Homo, which is also the genus for Erectus and the genus for Neanderthal and the genus for Denisovian and the genus for Nalati. The genus for Lucy is Anthropithecus, and the genus for Boisei is Paranthropus. And then the species for us is Sapien. Neanderthal is a species. Denisovian is a species. Australopithecus. What was Lucy's species? afarensis. Australopithecus being again the genus, afarensis being the species. The genus for Boisei is Paranthropus, and the species is Boisei. So they're not the same genus as us, but they're the same tribe as us. They're the same line as us. It just is a little bit further. They're a cousin, but they're like a fourth cousin, right? Like Neanderthal is a first cousin, and this is a fourth cousin because this is, or like a fourth cousin once removed, because this is great, 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 great grandmother's first daughter's child, right? Or descendant, right? Hey, beautiful. Yeah, there's no descendants from Boise to as far as we can tell. I'm not sure, like, so I don't think like they know the Heidelbergensis and Erectus is where we're coming from, but I'm not sure what they decide Erectus has come from. Like, and I might know when I just don't know, but I'm not sure what they decided that Erectus has come from. So the other one that I was talking about earlier that I have found was a 400,000-year-old DNA that they have thought up until now belonged to Neanderthal, uh, though they hadn't gotten the DNA, but the mitochondrial DNA is far more similar to that of Denisovians. Um, and so it's thought that this is Heidelbergensis, where Denisovian is coming from. Or maybe it's Denisovian. There's a few different ways that they think that they can trace it down. The other one is Altamira man. Altamira man was thought to Altamira man they didn't know was Neanderthal, but the DNA has decided that it is Neanderthal. That 400,000-year-old DNA with the mitochondrial DNA being Denisovian, though, that's that same DNA I think that we were talking about before, where we were talking about they found a Y DNA prior to, no, it was further back. No, it has to be because, yeah, it is because it's in Spain. So we were talking about how the Y DNA for Neanderthal doesn't seem to exist, and that the Y signature DNA for Neanderthal before their mix with Homo sapiens seems to more closely associate with Y DNA for Denisovian. So this absolutely, if the mtDNA is Denisovian, then the Y DNA, if they've got any Y DNA out of it, and which I think is what it is, because when I was reading on it, it was the oldest DNA that we found, and it was roughly this time. I thought it was actually earlier, but um, the Y DNA would be Denisovian, so this would be a Denisovian. And then if we're looking at that, that would mean that the oldest DNA that we have is Denisovian. They're stating in this that they were previously identifying it as Heidelbergensis, but the DNA is stating different. Yeah. Because when we were looking before, at, let me see if I can find the actual article because I know that I had I put it aside with the Y DNA research I was doing a couple minutes ago. Not minutes, but so when we're looking at Y DNA of Neanderthals, what we see is that most of the remains of Neanderthals and Denisovians discovered throughout the world belong to women, where the few male specimens available do not contain enough DNA for reliable analysis of that chromosome. The only such study was carried out in 2016 on a short gene sequence retrieved from a Neanderthal sequence found in El Cedrón in Spain. They're now being able to analyze samples that are previously unusable with another new technique out of Max Planck, because Max Planck has all of the techniques, um, where they successfully sequenced the Y chromosome of 2 Denisovians from the Denisovian cave and 3 Neanderthals from the caves of El Cedrón in Belgium and Mesa in Russia. They found that the Neanderthals' Y chromosome was actually much closer genetically to modern humans than that of the Denisovians. Um, when paleogeneticists analyzed the oldest known Neanderthal fossil discovered in the Cima de los Hisbos cave in Spain, that's the one that we were just talking about at 400,000, and estimated to be about 400,000 years old, they discovered that its mitochondrial DNA more closely resembled that of the Denisovians. This suggests that the mitochondrial DNA of the Neanderthals was totally replaced following late hybridization with populations from which modern humans are descended. According to estimates by paleogeneticists, the same may apply to the Y chromosome, thought to have been completely substituted in Neanderthal populations between 150 to 350,000 years ago. Given the low genetic variability and small size of Neanderthal groups at the time, only a few dozen individuals, this incorporation of the modern Y chromosome into their gene pool, what geneticists call integration, played a positive role for their survival by increasing genetic variability, according to researchers. They have not analyzed the Y DNA in the Cima de las Huesos cave. Just as for the mitochondrial DNA, we expect that this Y chromosome will be genetically closer to that of the Denisovians, they conclude. So they haven't actually analyzed it yet, apparently. I thought that they had analyzed that one. What was the Yeah. Well, and they do replace Neanderthal Y, but I read somewhere that it's thought that the Y chromosome they replaced was a Y chromosome that was closely related to Denisovians. I'll have to look it up again and see what I can find. But I do know that all the newer ones are all Y chromosomes that are closely related to modern Homo sapiens. I feel like they were just stating, by the time we're meeting up, the populations are so small. Again, we talked about the fact that they had like a couple periods of almost extinction, right? So the populations are so small, so narrow genetically that they need that excess. They need that incoming genetics to maintain population and to keep going, right? Yeah. Okay, so any questions on Boise Eye and the stone tool kit that we're finding? East Africa wasn't a stable cradle for our species ancestors, Potts said. It's more a boiling cauldron of environmental change with downpours and droughts and a diverse, ever-changing menu of foods. Oldowan stone tools would have cut and pounded through it all and helped early tool makers adapt to new places and new opportunities, whether it's a dead hippo or a starchy root. The tools do show usage on plants, like it shows that they're pounding plants with them as well. There's residue analysis of wear patterns as well. On which study to create this one? It's not posting. Let me see if I can pull up the actual. For Boise. For this site for Boise Eye? It's not. It doesn't like to. You can't do it with the .com. This might actually let you download. Let me try. Yes. You have to be able to. Okay, so I'll put this on the site. I've got is it at Cuny? CUNY? The one I just found at Cooney let me download the actual, I've got Olawan tool behaviors through time on the Homa Peninsula, Kenya of 2019. I don't see though that this talks about Boisei. Hmm. I'm posting it to the website, Tamara. The link tree is probably going to go down soon, but I am posting it to the website. I do have a couple articles on it already there under the This Week tab. But the one I just found through Cooney is on there, but I didn't see anything about Boisei in the one through Cooney, and I want to make sure that I've got. Because the article that I've got through Cooney is from 2019, and so I'm trying to. I'm not seeing the title, babe. Uh, put it in Discord. I had to think of the word because I can't look at any of the messages in here. Oh, are you kidding me? Discord hates me. Oh my God, no. Okay. I'll have to sign it in. I'll put it up on the thing as soon as I can get it. February 29th. Okay. Okay. I see what you're saying. Awesome. I can't get to sign on to my computer right now for some reason. I've got to actually be off of my phone so that I can actually pull it through. So as soon as I get out of here, I'll go ahead and pull it up and post that on the site too so everyone can find it. Yeah. Hold on one second. Let's see. Haha, got in there. Yeah, it is giving you the whole article. Perfect. Okay. Oh, look at that. Yeah, you can even see the tools on here. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. Okay, this is beautiful. Mm. Okay, so this one won't come in as a it won't actually come in as an embedded, so it's just going to be a text link at the top of the page to science.org. Science.org is actually a really good free journal or free access space. This is really cool. It actually shows the bones and the tools, and it actually shows the teeth, so you can see like the wear pattern and how it wears. So one of the things that they're talking in here is why the wear, and what they're talking about is the fact that they have a high presence of heavy materials like sands and things like that in the diet, and that gives a high wear. We see that in all early, well, we see that in a lot of different species actually that are grazers or not grazers, herbivoric. Uh, they have quartzites and rhyolite oilwan percussive tools used to process soft, such as soft tubers, vegetables, and fruits, and hard, such as fibrous tubers or woody plants, parts, plant tissues. And they're showing which ones are which too. Okay, so the anterior tuberosity of the tibia has a series of four short parallel marks, figure 3A, as you're looking at it. When you're looking at this, you'll see the marks that we were talking about that I was curious of. That makes total sense because where they're at and the way that they're placed is actually like it looks like more cut. When it was described in the article, it was like four short parallel, and to me, that was like they were all in a line, right? Like it paralleled up, and I was like, why would you do it like that? But these are actually not like that. Nice. It's a good article. Most do support free access. It's just really hard to be able to find. Like, a lot of times when you're going through, you'll find articles that will give you what the abstract of the article is, but they won't actually let you see the whole article. They'll let you see bits and pieces, but they won't let you see the whole article. Sometimes you can find a PDF version of it. Sometimes you have to go through like 3 or 4 different ways to get to it. And sometimes even then, it's like you still have to get through a different one to get to it, right? Like things like science.org. There's another one which actually is one of the ones that I posted. Oh, maybe it wasn't on that. It was on something else. Archaeologist.org is another one that's actually pretty good about making sure to have free access to it. And where's the other one? There's a psi.org or something like that, that's actually really good as well for getting free access to people, right? Um, there's a couple of book sites that you can try, but again, it's hard to roughly half of the community is at this forward movement of free thought, of freeing knowledge, right? Of giving knowledge as, and we talk about this like throughout schooling. We talked about this several times about how um, part of the community is totally for free access to knowledge, right? But then the other part of the community, and it is not just publishers, it's archaeologists or scientists. It's that hoarding thing. If they can hoard it and maintain it, then it becomes valuable, and that gives them value, and that gives them a way to exploit, right? A way to create money in an environment that's run on money. And it's also this idea that if you can block education behind a paywall, then being somebody who is highly educated makes you more valuable, right? And they want to, there is still a large group who would rather hoard and keep the education, because by hoarding and keeping the education, they can maintain this semblance that academia is an upper class, right? Um, they can maintain that division between the educated and the non-educated, right? And again, it gets back into that finding a way to other, finding a way to, either maintain power or maintain the constructs of power, maintain what little power that you've given. We see the same thing in the people who are so pissed off over the idea of forgiving student loans, right? Well, I had to pay mine off. Why should you not? I paid for myself to go to college. Why can't you pay for yourself to go to college? Well, for one, it didn't cost me $900, cost me several thousands of dollars, right? There's a huge difference there. But for two, why the fuck do you care? I was never able to work in my field, the field that I have a student loan on, and I was exploited by a school. So should I not have those paid off, right? Like people, it's that maintenance of value. It's the same thought process of if you raise the minimum wage, then well, I'm making $15 an hour. If you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, then I'm making minimum wage, right? You know, without understanding that it's not the raise of minimum wage, it's the problem. It's the fact that your boss isn't coincidentally or coincidingly raising the actual raise too, right? So it's the same within that system. There are still so many people within the academic community. And you see that there are several of the older people within the academic community who are totally for freedom of information. And the vast majority of the younger people in the academic community are for free information. But for the most part, the older members of the community are a little bit like, yeah, nah, we'll keep this here, right? We'll keep it sacrosanct. We'll keep it this goal that you have to achieve, because if I can keep it this goal that you have to work hard for to achieve, um, then my worth is larger, right? And so that's why we see that there is still a lot of it that you might find. Like I was looking for something the other day and I could find different articles about it, but I couldn't find the article about it itself. Like I could find, and I don't remember what exactly it was, but I could find the one article that I was looking for that had the actual evidence in it. Like I found all the articles that were quoting that article. I found all the articles that were citing that article, but to look for that article and to access that article so I could see what the context was around the quotes and to see what the information was around the quotes. That comes up on Google Scholar as coming through 4 different spaces, and when it comes up on Google Scholar as coming through 4 different spaces, those 4 different spaces all led back to one space, and that one space all wanted me to pay tattooing. There's a book on tattooing that's an archaeological book on tattooing that shows tattooing throughout history, and it's showing mummies, like showing tattoos in spaces we didn't think had tattoos way earlier, because of mummification. And we're not talking Egypt, we're talking like Siberia, right? Where they had pulled the mummies out of the ground, and the skin had darkened when they pulled the mummies out. So they missed the tattoos on them, but they have new ways of discovering tattoos. There's this whole big book that's written on tattooing that's archaeological, that takes tattooing from across the globe from different spaces. The book itself costs $60, right? Same thing with articles. You'll find all of the articles that it's referenced from, all of the articles that talk about it, all the articles that have the quotes, but to find the article that the actual anthropologist or archaeologist wrote, that you have to get into, usually it's Eldevice, or, and I want to say it's JSTOR. I think it's JSTOR, but JSTOR, there's like a JSTOR that you can access through my school, but there's a J something or another. Maybe it's not JSTOR, but there's this another site that half the articles are through that you can't access without paying for it. And it's like a $20 a month payment, like, or a $60 one-time download or things like that, right? And so you find that a lot of times you can find the articles that reference the original. Yes, thank you. And you can find the articles that reference the original, but you can't find the original without having to pay for it, right? Which can become very problematic. We do have a few sites like sci.org, the anthropological sites. We've got a couple, but again, if so, this article itself is a fantastic article, and it's so in depth that you don't really need to go anywhere else. But if you wanted to go to the references and the notes down on the bottom here, you can go to the reference here. Let me click on the second one. Oh, it's going to the reference in there. But you can, like, it'll give you the reference articles, but some of those reference articles, you're not going to be able to actually get. Yes. So here's one. So one of those reference articles on this is the source book of Paleolithic transitions. The Oldowan Eshuan transition is their developed Oldowan artifact tradition. It's an article from 2009. This one is the other one that I was thinking of. It's Springer, Link Springer. It's not JSTOR. JSTOR, I think, is free, right? But this one, if you go to this, it will tell you who's referenced it. It'll tell you who's referenced in it, and it'll give you the abstract of it. But you want to buy a chapter or the ebook, or like there's a preview of the subscription content access via your institution. Springer is not one that I can access. Yeah. Right. So, then it was Springer, not JSTOR. I think, well, maybe JSTOR is hard and problematic. I can't remember. But so when you go to the article, and this article itself, that you thankfully gave me, thank you, I appreciate it, is uh the science.org is really usually very like, they give you the whole article and they're very in depth of the article. But say this article didn't give all those pictures and all of those tools, but it just gave these references to these other articles, and then you're trying to click on the references to get to those other articles, and you get that block. So it just becomes one of those things where you try and hunt down through 3 different ways. It can become very problematic. And again, it's not problematic for me so much, because if I'm really into it, like, I saw this last night, so I haven't dug on it at all. But if I'm really into it, I have no problem digging 5 ways through Sunday, and sometimes I get frustrated, but I do have access to more things than most people do because I do have access to Portland State University Library. I do have access to many of the sites that have paywalls. You can log in with a university login and they'll let you in. So I do have access to that. But just because I'm let in doesn't mean that if I post it on the website so somebody else can go and look at it, that they're going to be let in. Same thing with not Smithsonian. There's another one that's National Geographic or something like that puts out these huge articles all the time, but I can't even access them because they're by a paywall, right? I can't even look to see who wrote, like who's the article by, like what does the article have an abstract of, right? Um, and so trying to get it just becomes weird. And it's not, it's only, in the fact that it makes it difficult for everybody to get to the access of the information that is really problematic. But again, we're dealing with that older generation, or not even so much older generation. Sometimes it's in the younger generations that really has that I paid for this, so you should respect that I paid for it, right? Like, I put in all the time and the effort and the work, and how dare you think that you can understand anything without going through me, right? So, okay, everybody, I am going to go ahead and take off. Um, I didn't do what I came in to do, but I'm going to go do other things anyways and go game probably. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday when I'm back around. We might talk on this a little bit more or whatever else comes across my desk until then. Um, adore you guys. Have a great one. Goodwill Hunting math prof. Same. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. See you guys. Have a great one. Bye, YouTube. Oh, has a spinal cord. Thank you, Allens. I didn't know that, but that makes total sense. Makes total sense. Bye.